Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Prateek Singh. We talked about optimizing versus maximizing, playing cricket with expats, and helping people to perform at their best, if they want to. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello everyone, and hello Pratik. Is that how I should pronounce your name?
Yeah, Prateek. Absolutely. Just like that.
I these days I prefer to ask it on camera because especially with remote and being trying to have a very diverse number of people, it's not always names that I'm used to, and I've seen that even with names that I think how to pronounce it, it's better to just ask.
Similarly, Eves, right?
Yes, Eve.
Perfect.
Actually, you can just
Eve.
say
Okay.
Eve,
Eve.
like we say Adam
Perfect.
and Eve.
Perfect.
But I think, like with many people, I respond if people say Eves as well. It's the things
Perfect.
that we've seen. And I want to jump even a little more to that. Is that today at this moment I'm in Belgium, so this is Ghent, Belgium, or Europe, like I said,
Mhm.
and we go to. Or thanks to Google, we go all around the world to
Yeah.
uh, plantation. Is that yeah? That's it, and
Yes.
that's Miami or something like that, right?
It's close to Miami. Yeah, we're very close to Miami.
Yeah.
About 20, 30 minutes away from Miami City. Yeah.
So okay, so that shows us a little bit, and on my side, it's oops, that didn't go well. On my side, it's 7:39,
Mhm.
so it's 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. Sorry, 7 in the evening, or almost 8. What's time on your side?
It's 1:39, so it's about 1:39 in the afternoon. Yeah.
So we see not just miles or kilometers away, also a lot of time distance away.
Yeah.
That's a little bit how we roll here and how we do that. So, Pratik, before we jump into the questions, for the few people that don't know you, could you introduce yourself a little bit?
Oh, I'm sure there are a lot of your viewers who don't know me, but Prateek Singh, I started off my career as a developer more than 2 decades ago, and since then I've been doing a bunch of stuff with leadership and agility, and mostly in the lean Kanban area, and mostly in the Kanban space, and been working with teams to help them become more efficient, effective, and predictable. I'm also the head of learning and development at prokanban.org, so and an independent consultant. But that's what I do. I just help teams perform at their best if they need to.
Oh, there are people who don't need to perform at their best.
It's interesting, there is. I mean, sometimes doing your best might not be the best option, even, right? It's like it's you might be overextending yourself while you're already meeting your customers' requirements. But there are also people who don't necessarily want to perform at their best as well.
Yeah, I definitely reckon I can see that in some cases we go faster. Actually, for me, that's a kind of goal, as that if the bottleneck is outside your organization, outside your team, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
So that is indeed something that in that sense might be useful. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's especially when we're talking lean and Kanban, thinking about where is my bottleneck, and designing your organization or designing your team to see where can we put the bottleneck, because will always be a bottleneck. Yeah. And I prefer to put it somewhere, or prefer to indeed see how can we move our organization to put the bottleneck at the place where we prefer, than that the bottleneck is somewhere where where we have lots of troubles with it. Let's put it.
Yeah, it's more about optimizing than maximizing. So we want to create optimal conditions, not conditions where we're trying to maximize throughput or things like that.
That's interesting, because indeed, when you maximize, when you, especially now when you said the sentence maximize, I immediately think about machines or anything that runs at 100% capacity, and we
Yeah.
all know that's very dangerous. We can do the same thing with people, but that has a limited. And I think people break down even faster than machines when you do it at 100% capacity. So maximizing might be good if you're I don't know, if you're in the Olympics and you have to run for 100 seconds or 100 meters, then maybe you want to maximize that thing.
Yeah.
But then of course you'll need, I don't know how many time, but I assume a day or whatever to recover. And so where
Yeah.
optimizing is, let's keep running and let's keep it's a
Yeah.
sustainable pace, let's keep
Uh,
producing.
yeah. Our work, people systems are more like running a marathon than running 100 meters. We want to
Thank
optimize for
you.
the long run rather than,
Yeah,
have that
it's the
sprint.
one thing I hate, or the biggest thing I hate about Scrum is call it the sprints. No,
Sprint.
these are marathons. These are marathons, and there are a couple of people who do multiple marathons one after the other. But that's, yeah, these people are completely crazy. Ultra marathon. There is
Mhm.
a person. I don't know if it's European or Belgian, but I heard last year there was someone who tried to run a marathon like every day of the year or something like that.
I,
Like it's
yeah,
like.
I have never run a marathon because I don't have the patience to train for one.
There is. I'm trying to think who. I can't come up with it. Of course, I can't come up with the name. But there is, at least in this video series, some person who is who actually learned to run and to learn to run for a marathon. It's a really interesting. I will add the person and the link in the show notes afterwards. But it's a really interesting story that it's
Hmm.
almost started as a joke with his brother, because his brother would run a marathon in his city and saying, okay, can I join then? And so he asked it months in advance, and he said, okay, it might actually be a good joke if I train for it as well, and I won't tell him, and so I can run with it. And then I think halfway into the preparation, he decided, okay, I'll spoil the fun with my brother because otherwise I won't be able to do it. But yeah, this is the short version, but the story is really really interesting,
That's awesome. Yeah,
because yeah, it's and actually at this moment that person is still running, or at least at the moment of
that's
the
great.
recording that was
Yeah.
still running. So and a little bit like you and like me as well. I don't think I'll ever run a marathon. I don't think I'm prepared, but this was an interesting and also for me an inspiring story, in the sense that it was like, okay, this person says, I didn't think that I was able. I started out as a kind of joke, and all of a sudden now 4 or 5 years later I'm still running. So it's like, wow, okay. That's
Great.
anyway, we jumped into a lot of these things. Let's move to that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in the way you are?
Usually people don't know because they see me in the professional surroundings. They don't know that I'm an avid cricket player and I play every Sunday. I'm part of a
Wow.
cricket. I'm a part of a cricket league here, a pretty vibrant cricket league because we have a lot of expats from different cricket playing countries that are here, and I play every Sunday. And the thing about that is everything that not everything most things that I know about teamwork, about working with people, about leading people even, um, a lot of it comes from the cricket field. A lot of it comes from how 11 of us come together to accomplish this task every Sunday. And
Mhm.
I've led that team for multiple years, and getting people to focus on the things that will make a difference, and getting people to be motivated to show up every Sunday and do their best, or perform in the way the team needs them to perform, I think shapes a lot of my understanding of the professional world as well.
That's interesting, and I had no idea that cricket would be, yeah, in well, I keep saying Miami because it's for Belgium, it
Yeah,
sounds
yeah, yeah.
close enough, but in that environment, that there was actually a vivid cricket
Mhm.
environment. And is that then something? Are these tournaments that are played just locally or cross country, or how should I see that?
Um, most of these are local. Most of these are local. We travel within the state or around the state quite a bit, but there are expats from the Caribbean countries, which a lot of those countries play cricket. which are right next door to us. And obviously expats like me from India and from Pakistan and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh who are around here. So in total, I believe we have about 40 cricket teams in this area, in the
Wow.
South Florida area, and we have regular tournaments throughout the year. We have at least 3 or 4 tournaments that we play.
And so when you say you play every weekend,
Mhm.
is that then mostly local, or because it's when you say 40, it sounds like it could be a long distance to travel, or how should I
It's
see that?
it's mostly local, and by local I mean within a 1 hour travel radius. Like the farthest I travel is an hour and a half, but most of my games are within a 1 hour travel radius.
That's acceptable, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
With some cities, it's already taking longer to just travel the city in 1 hour.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, sometimes
so
sometimes we have games where we're traveling longer distances, but those are weekend tours where we go for 2 or 3 days. But yeah.
mhm. And you said that you were influenced, or you were, yeah, you learned some things about leadership and other. Could you give an example of something that you've learned, and maybe the example of how does that relate to cricket?
Yeah, it's there are a couple of things. There are at least 2 things that I will highlight. One is, um, based on the game situation, you can understand how likely you are to win if you adapt a certain strategy versus a different strategy. Like
Wow.
we intuitively understand that because we've been playing the game for a long time, and we have seen the situations before, and we've seen how doing certain things has made it better and how doing other things has made it worse. And that kind of, for me, that translates to when you are faced with a problem at work, you usually have a couple of ways you can go about solving it, but you can think about this in a very probabilistic way of, hey, which is a method that's more likely to work, and let's start working in that direction. Which is an outcome that is more likely, let's start working in that direction. If that does not seem to be right, okay, then we can take the other approach. But it helps you think in a more probabilistic way, a more risk aware way. Asking
Hmm.
asking what are the risks behind our choices that we're making right now. Um, as a leader of the team, as a cricket captain, I always have to make the choice of, okay, where do I go next? Which player do I go to next for executing the next thing? And with each of those, it's a very intuitive gut feel calculation, but there's a gut feel calculation happening right now. This is the right move. Right now, that other thing is the right move. So
And is that
that's
something, because I really like how you say it, because you've been playing for, well,
Mhm.
most of your life, I would say. You
Yeah.
have played, well, and if it's every weekend, let's
Mhm.
say 40, 50 times a year, multiplied
Yeah.
by the number of years. So that's a lot of
Yeah.
games. And maybe
Yeah.
sometimes if it's tournaments, it's probably multiple games
Multiple.
in a
Yep.
weekend.
Mhm.
So I don't know, maybe it's 1,000 games or whatever. So you've learned some things about, and you, like you say, you have some gut feeling. A
Yeah.
little bit, I would say, a little bit like I read traffic. I can also see like, okay, this
Yeah.
car is probably going to do this without knowing, even if he doesn't put on his lights or whatever. I just
Yeah. You can see.
you know that this is going there.
Yeah.
But this is something you can train other people, because like when you say, you might see that also in teams, in teamwork, but
Mhm.
how do you then explain it? Because I remember, well, if I'm coaching someone after such a thing, I might just know like, okay, this is not going
Mhm.
well. But if I try to teach it, they might not listen, and it might actually backfire. So how do you
Yeah.
deal with that?
The very first thing that we need to understand, or we need people to understand, is our actions that affect the future should not be looked at in a deterministic way. They should be looked at in a probabilistic way. If we are very used to thinking in a deterministic way, if I do this, this will happen. The first thing we have to understand is we don't have that much control. If we do this thing, there are multiple things that can happen, and these are all the different probabilities of these things happening. Once people have that, once people have accepted that, then we can talk about, all right, now how do you judge whether you should do option A or option B? Now how do you go into the judgments of understanding what is a better way of proceeding? um, but all that starts only if we first accept that we can have multiple results. As you were saying, that the traffic thing is great, right? Because then you start seeing patterns and you start doing pattern matching and you go, oh, that's happening, that means that's going to happen. Cool, now let's start doing some, once we accept the probabilistic world, then let's start doing some pattern matching. The idea is not to teach exactly what pattern to match to what. The idea is to see, how do you recognize patterns, how do you
Mm.
recognize patterns so that you can interpret them.
And like you say, yeah, again, especially in traffic, there's a lot of things that are happening, and you need, well, basically, you need eyes on your back, and you need eyes everywhere because there's so. And I do, yeah, I'm giving this example because I've just trained. Well, just the last couple of years, I've trained two of my sons to drive. So yeah, there is a lot of these things that I see, and I just know, like, okay, I see a lot of stuff, and I can try to make them see it. And I think a little bit like, if you grow up into a city, you're used also, even without driving a car, you drive a bicycle, you are
Mhm.
used to seeing traffic already. If you're like, my partner grew up in a much smaller city, and she didn't see much traffic. So for her, getting adopted when learning driving a car was much different than for me, for example. And do you see that also with people, for example, in cricket that came from another sport or never? So I can imagine that there might be people on your team that don't have that experience.
Yeah, it absolutely takes some time, but this is why coaches like us exist. This is why more experienced practitioners exist, because you can start nudging people towards, hey, when you see this happening, why do you think that happened? Oh, that's why. All right, that's great. Let's remember that for the next game, and then kind of move people through. And that's what I was saying. It's a great for me, cricket's been a great way to test some of this out, or actually learn some of this, to go, I I, I can help people grow by introducing them to these patterns, by helping them understand these patterns, and then themselves they can start applying these.
Mhm. And like you say, it's but what you said earlier, I want to stress out again, but it's not deterministic, and yeah,
Yeah.
so then it's really about, okay, but last time that happened, that didn't happen. Yeah, that was maybe because of another thing, and maybe it's because on was Wednesday, and then it didn't happen,
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. It's actually, there's a great traffic example. A couple of days ago, I was driving somewhere, and I was so I'm in America, so the leftmost lane turns left, and other lanes go straight, and we're at a light. I'm in the leftmost lane. I'm going to turn left, and as soon as the light to turn left came on, we started turning left, and the lady who was in the lane next to me, she accelerated straight into the car in front of her, because her peripheral vision told
Was
her
you?
the pattern is things are moving. So it means I should be moving, because her mind connected the pattern of, if people around me are moving, means I need to move. But the
But the
light to go
person in front
straight,
was.
exactly. Yeah. So the light to go straight was not on. So the person in front wasn't moving. So she went straight into it. So that's to your point.
Exactly.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the traffic right just next to my house. Well, next to my house, but I
Yeah.
think like 200 meters to my house, where my street is having a crossing with another street, and they've completely. So the last year, yeah, something like a half a year ago, they changed the whole. So the crossroad, they changed it,
Mhm.
everything, and so there's new lights with new rules. So for the large rule, the large thing, indeed, it's now different. Before it was green for everyone, and now it's green for going forward or green for
Mhm.
going left or right. And it's a smart light in the sense that if it knows that, for example, there is a pedestrian on the that is crossing the road, it won't go green. And so every time you go there, it's completely different. And I've
Yes.
had it literally, like, I think a month or two ago. it was green for going forward, and I had to go right, and I just drove right, and afterwards like, damn it, it wasn't green for me. It was red, but I realized it while I was driving already. I was like, come, okay, there was no pedestrian or whatever, so I don't understand why I wasn't allowed. But I made that mistake exactly because you said I was so trained. I've been living there for 21, almost 22 years. And so I'm so used to this light. I'm so used to this. And damn, yeah. This is an interesting example. It's I didn't think about that part when I was talking about traffic, but it's so much. Yeah, this is so great metaphor that you can use in multiple kind of directions.
Yeah.
So thanks for these stories. Yeah.
No, awesome.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, glad to share them. I'm thank you for you sharing your stories, because yeah, these metaphors are the way we get across to people to help them understand. Yeah.
Yeah, fully agree there. That's a little bit on how we work and how we learn. Okay, let's move to that next question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have anything idea what would have become of you?
I do not know, because it's a weird thing. Okay, in an ideal world, I would have been a professional cricketer, but I do not have the talent and the ability to be a professional cricket player. But if I weren't doing what I'm doing right now, in the way my life has taken shape, my guess is I would have probably stayed a developer. I loved being a developer, but then I loved helping other developers, so I went into management and all that stuff. But I really, even today, I pretend to be a developer every other day. I just go in and start writing some random stuff because that's what really excited me. And so if nothing else, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I would probably be sitting down here writing code.
And so does that mean that, because before you talked about, okay, your coaching and leadership and everything, that you from time to time also do some technical coaching, or how should I see that?
I do some technical coaching every once in a while. For the most part, though, I write code to create tools or write simulations to help me further my coaching. At this point, most of the time I write code, it is to create simulations. It is to help people understand that probabilistic nature and how to make decisions in that probabilistic world. But I have done some technical coaching in terms of helping people understand test-driven development kind of things and pairing and all those things too.
And is that something that I'm asking a little bit because I've seen. I want to have. Sorry, I try to avoid not to put words into you, so that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
When you look at TDD and pairing as these kind of examples, do you see something has changed the last couple of years on how this is used, done, anything there?
What's changed for me? There have been some interesting shifts in the past few years, especially with people going remote. It seems like pairing initially looked like it would be harder, but people actually took to it a lot more of late because people got used to being on Zoom and sharing screen and all that. So it seems like people took to it a lot. Initially, though, there was an interesting thing that was happening, which was when everything went open source. When a lot of open source projects came up, people started doing pull requests more than pairing and writing tests together. And it became, to me, code reviews and pull requests became this default behavior as opposed to working together. It became this thing of delayed collaboration. We were delaying collaboration till we have an official code review instead of, hey, pairing or mobbing together and working together. So I think it took a step back a few years ago. It's come further because I see more and more people talking about mobbing. TDD seems to have come a full circle as well. A lot of people initially were like, no, I don't want to do TDD. That sounds too much. Then people were like, well, maybe I'll do TDD for some things and not others. And of late, people are starting to do TDD more and more as well. So
Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting to learn. I do wonder when you said about having more pairing in a way, like you say, there is a part of the delayed pairing that I definitely
Yeah.
recognize that. Somehow people think, yeah, because it's working for Linux, we should also do it. Not sure, but there is a difference between how that open source community works, because
Right.
these people basically don't have to work and talk to each other.
Mhm.
Well, I hope we can talk to each other. But in that sense, I wonder if we're seeing remote people that they might use pairing as a way to connect with each other. Do you think there is something
Yeah,
there, or?
absolutely. From a social perspective, that's been a big drawback of everyone being remote. I worked for a company for an entire year, and I think I saw my colleagues once because they had called an all team meeting. But that's been a big drawback, and I think this working on things together is the way we all connect most of the time now. So for me, pairing
Mm,
and mobbing in the remote sense are one of the ways that people can really have that social connection as well.
that's that. Yeah, that's the wonder I have, and it's nice to see that you have something similar, that you recognize that. And that might be something that many people didn't think about. Of course, the tools have been changed a lot since 20
Yeah.
years ago, because then working remote, I do remember in 2005 working with a team all across the world, 4 hours
Hmm.
time distance, and lots of miles away. On Skype, but Skype, we were happy because we thought we could see each other. But I think it would be compared to like comparing a video game today and a video game of 20 years ago. It was probably also with pixels and another
Yeah.
kind of thing that we thought we could see each other. But it was a way to do that. But today is indeed completely different.
Yeah.
Having multiple screens is much more accepted today. Having, yeah, much better equipment, sounds,
Mhm.
headphones, whatever. That there's a lot
Yeah,
of improvement.
the technology has definitely enabled mobbing and pairing remote. I worked with one team that almost exclusively mobbed. Like that's all they did, and they were all remote. So it's definitely a thing that's possible to do.
Great, great. That's yeah. I see it, not well, not as much as I would like to. Depends a little bit on what kind of clients and companies we work for, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have the same feeling. Is that the number of people who are really fan of it, I would say, and fond of it, are also growing, and even more stronger about. Let's not. I know a person that said, "Okay, if you take away my ensembling, then I will just quit right on the spot, because that's how I want to work today."
Mhm.
So and I've seen some other people in a similar
Yeah.
kind of setting. Okay, let's move to that third question. What is your biggest challenge, or I would say the biggest challenge today, that you want to share on open on the internet, of course, and why is that a good thing for you?
My biggest challenge today, and I'm looking at this as something that's across the industry, is very similar to what you were talking about with that traffic light pattern earlier, near your place. My biggest challenge right now is a lot of people, a lot of folks who have entered into management or project management, program management, team management, um, and have this view of agile as a particular thing, as this is the
Mm,
way you do it, and those patterns are ingrained. This is the only way to do it. And as you were saying, right, when they change the rules on the traffic lights, you make the wrong turns because you have certain ingrained patterns. My biggest
exactly.
challenge, yeah, my biggest challenge right now is challenging those patterns and getting people to see that some of these patterns that we have talked about don't work in every context. In fact, it is okay to throw some of these patterns out when they're not working. And there seems to be a good amount of resistance out there for it, because it seems like, to me, it increasingly seems like we have gotten people used to getting a recipe, that here is a way to do it,
Mm,
follow this, and people have gotten used to that. And now when you say, oh, maybe there are parts of that recipe that don't work for you, they go, wait, what a minute, where is your recipe then? Give me your recipe. Like, no, that's
Mm.
not what I'm saying. I'm saying observe and create new patterns that work for you. So that for
Yeah, I
me is
can.
the biggest challenge. Yeah.
I can recognize that. Of course, I also noticed the opposite, or maybe I need to, well, I don't know the exact time frame, but I do remember when if I look back at how I coached a couple of years ago, it was like, I don't want to give recipes. I don't do it. I realized, depending on what's the experience that some people have, if they're completely new, then you do
Mhm.
have to give them some recipes. If you've never cooked or if you've never
Yeah.
played the game or whatever, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, but okay, here's a chessboard, play. Yeah, but what are the
Yeah.
rules? I
What are the
mean,
rules? Yeah.
what are some of the things? And even if you give the rules, then still people don't know with chess that there are some better ways to open a game
Yeah.
than just move every pawn or whatever, just moving. So there is. I've noticed that, at least for me, I don't know how it is for you, but I've learned that I sometimes have to recognize where people are, and in the beginning, not just purely coaching, but saying, okay, you know what, in this situation, I would advise you
Mhm.
this. And when they're a little bit further away, I can say, here are two things. And I would advise you this, but still, these two things are there. Let's discuss.
Yeah.
And later, it will be more like, here are two things or three things or whatever you choose. And then later is like, how many options do you see? And that's, yeah, I've learned that I had to do that. I don't know, how was that for you?
I completely agree. I think when people are newer to this, they need to get the basics. But here is the thing: when you give people a recipe, if someone is new to cooking, as you were mentioning, I'll give them the recipe of how to boil an egg. I am not going to have them make beef Wellington. I'm not gonna give them right. I'm not gonna. The recipe I want to give someone who's new is the simplest recipe possible. Let's start here, and then we can together find our way to what else we need to add to this. Oh, we figure.
Well, we're yeah, wonderful story. This is we're recording it on Valentine's Day, and I remember a friend of mine who, but now I'm talking again 20 years ago, who never cooked, and then contacted another. I'm not a good cook, but he contacted another friend of ours who was really a good cook, and said, "Okay, my girlfriend is coming over tomorrow. I want to make the best meal, whatever." It's like, you hardly know how to boil an egg. That was literally her message. Like, maybe that's not the best idea. Let's see. Yeah, but I want to show her I care and I want to do that. Yeah, I understand. But if you don't want to lose her, maybe you better take her to a restaurant than trying to make a meal that is very fancy. Yeah, but you did that. What you did 3 weeks ago, I really love that. Could you teach me how to cook it? Yeah, by tomorrow, please. It's like, no, let's not do that.
But that's the thing. I
And
think
that's
I think we have a I think we have a lot of that right now in process management in agile in general. Of everyone wants to make that Valentine's Day dinner because they see other people making it. Like,
exactly.
but no, but let's start with boiling an egg. Let's start there, and then we can get you there at some point. But let's start with the simplest thing possible.
Yeah, I really like that. That's really good. And so, if that is your biggest challenge, why is that a good thing for you? What part of that is
It's good for me because I get to have these kind of conversations, the exact conversation we're having right now, because it's this it helps me improve my coaching stance. It helps me improve this thing of okay, then in that case, what is the simplest thing I can say to people? What are the different ways I can get to people to realize that all these things that they're trying to do, all these big things that they're trying to do, are not necessary? How can I try all these different techniques to help people figure out how to simplify things to get better results? And I will say 80 to 90% of the things I try do not work. But it's those 10 to 20% that work. That is the thing that really helps me grow to go, oh yeah, that's great. This is what gets through to people. Talking about boiling an egg might get through to people. That's the same conversation that we just had. That's the thing that helps me grow, of understanding how different humans react to different metaphors and different ways of trying to change those patterns that have been ingrained for a long time.
Especially because, yeah, like you said, people are different, and you might get a reaction like, I don't like eggs, so I'm not going to boil an egg. Okay, what else can we do that is that simple?
Yeah.
Let's make rice, let's make something that is easy, but let's not focus on. Yeah, but what I understand is that you were trying to minimize the thing and make it something that's achievable, because we want people to have success. And I literally can imagine me a few people that would say, but this, I don't like that simple thing.
Mhm.
Okay, what else is simple that you do like, and where can I help you with that kind of thing? And
Yeah.
what's the first step to success there? And that's, and like you say, these are really important conversations to have, and
Mhm.
interesting ones to do that. So that's, yeah, a really wonderful. Yeah, again, we're talking metaphors, but I think many people who are here on the show like to think in metaphors, especially because it's usually much clearer for people
Mhm.
when we do that. That's the thing that. Thanks for sharing that, because it's so depth conversation, so depth thing, and at the same time it's so understandable. I do hope that many people who've never done any programming or other kind of things can still understand the value of what you're saying
Yeah.
here.
Absolutely.
That well, and I want to move to that next one, because this is for me a nice example. Like with many of the other conversations I have, is that you have so much passion, so much drive. So do you know? Sorry, do you know where that drive, where that passion is coming from? Is that something that you always had, or where is that?
I, I do believe that whatever I have done in life, I've been very passionate about it. Whatever jobs I've had, whatever recreation even I've had, I've been very passionate about it. Uh,
And is that
and
when you say in your life? Is that also when you were young? Like, I don't know.
yeah, I,
Yeah, really.
I believe so, because so I went to boarding school for multiple years, and one of the things that we were taught in boarding school was, hey, here is your playtime, here is your work time, school, study time, playtime. And almost all the time we were giving 100% in everything we were doing, and that's something what our seniors pushed us towards. And I feel like that stuck. What also stuck with that was the choice to not do the things you're not passionate about. So if you're not passionate about something, it's like the principle of maximizing the amount of work not done. If you're not passionate about something, and if you have the choice to not do it, well, yeah, that is your option. Don't spend energy on things that you're not passionate about. Now, not everyone has that option. Completely recognize that. But if you do have the option, channel your passions into things you are that give you energy.
Yeah, I like that, and at the same, I'm also glad that you add that other part, that if you have the chance. I think also with what I've seen is that for many people, we sometimes discover our passion by doing something, and I think
Mhm.
sports is a really nice example. It's only when you do it a couple of, well, I would not say a couple of times,
Yeah.
but a couple of years or whatever, people gradually become even more passionate, become better at it, and it's, I think it's a vicious circle, and in a positive way, that the more you do that, you have some. But is that something you recognize also with your passions?
Absolutely. And let's even let's, as we've been talking about work, right? If you had asked me when I started my career, for the first 4 or 5 years of the career, if I would ever go into management, if I would ever talk about process, I would have said absolutely no.
Oh yeah.
I I am here to write code. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to build products.
Let's
But
not talk to
then,
people. Let's talk to a computer.
yeah, exactly. I'm here to build products. That's what I get paid to do. That's what I want to do. I only later, when I got, as you said, when I got a taste of it, when I started leading teams, because I kind of fell into it. When I started leading teams, when I started managing, I was like, okay, this actually makes sense. This is also something I'm passionate about. But it was only by doing that that I understood that I'm passionate about this.
Mm. Okay, that's yeah, and I can relate to that. I can definitely see how many people have some of these things. So it's really good
Mhm,
to hear these stories. It's also nice when you say, okay, I had that from a very young age,
mhm,
but and that is also very important to stress, I would say, is that the things you're passionate about are not the same as which we were
yeah,
10 or 15 years ago. And
mhm,
that moved on. And yeah, while you were saying that, I realized that I was very passionate at some point in my life about playing table tennis. And I know
mhm,
that I played it almost every day. And if I look back, I can't even at some point it like almost immediately stopped because my passion moved somewhere else, and I don't think I even literally thought much about it. It was like it feels like it's up, and probably that was already less passion the year before and other kind of things, but it really feels like what, and but that doesn't mean there was no passion. And that's also what I'm hearing with you. Your passion shifted from programming to leading and helping teams, and in a way, you're also creating products, but the products are on a
yeah.
different level. You're creating teams that are creating the products. Is that a
Mhm.
correct way to state that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's almost like you see you're talking to someone who's knee deep in Kanban all the time. It's almost so to me it sounds like you have a passion in progress limit where you have this much passion available and you can spread it how you want. So some things of the past will fade and newer things will absorb that passion.
Okay, that's indeed, yeah, what I heard, and it's interesting to see. I recognize a lot of that. I think I assume many of us,
Mhm,
and the hard part is, of course, it's unpredictable. Like sometimes people saying, "Oh, well, with children, where will that passion be?" My oldest one is at university, and I know before going to the university, it was like, "This is my most important choice in life because I will predict everything else." And in one way, it's like, yes, it is important, but it doesn't mean that this will be your passion for the rest of your years. That
mhm.
passion might move on, and I think you're a nice example of these kind of things. So thanks for sharing.
Oh,
I want to move to the next part, and is like, what is your biggest achievement? And actually, it's so basically, this is a moment to brag, and I want to stand a little bit behind, or the question behind is it easy for you as a person to brag? Is it easy to do this kind of things?
it really is not. I find it very very hard. uh, I've this is I think also a thing from, as you were saying, a lot of the stuff gets ingrained in your childhood. Uh, we growing up, my parents kind of taught me that your work speaks for itself. Like you do the thing, and you don't have to go tell people, "Hey, I did this, I did this." Your work speaks for itself, and it is not easy for me to do that.
So, and do you still believe that your work speaks for itself also, or do you think that, do you see moments where you actually need to take up that space, or do you still think it's
I think to directly answer that, I don't think people's work usually speaks for itself. I think they need a little bit of marketing and advertisement behind it. Uh, I still find it very hard to brag and say I did this, but I also think people who are doing good work need to put it out there that, hey, I am doing this work. Here is the stuff that I've been working on. Here are some things that I've been thinking about. Just to have that in the conversation, just to have people be aware of this is what's where my mind is. I still don't. I still find it very uncomfortable to brag or to be able to say, "Hey, I achieved this thing." It doesn't come to me naturally.
yeah, yeah, I can recognize that. I think many, this is why I started asking that sub question, because many people have that difficult. Well, it's just like, it feels like this is almost two options. Either you do that very easily, or you totally don't like to do that. And
Yeah.
like you say, many people in your camp, they kind of know they have to do it because,
Mhm.
well, if I just look for myself, I know I see it with others. I say, yeah, you should be more, and I will help you spread your message. And I'm like, but do I do it myself enough? That's kind of the hard part there. Huh?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but that was the message below. So, what is the thing that you're now that you call your biggest achievement?
Uh, I, I can give you the more. It's funny. The first thing that came to my mind, the very first thing that came to my mind was more on a personal front than a professional front. It was that having how do I say this? Having built a happy home with my family, my daughter, my wife, my dogs. Like we're in everyone finds this to be a very safe space and has happiness here. I think that on a personal front, I feel like that is a major achievement, because everything else we do ends up going towards that. uh, Professionally, I'll only say this is an achievement because this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Is writing a book and getting it out there. It's just something that I had been wanting to do a long time, and I finally put some time together to do it. So, if anything, those would be the ones that I would talk about. Yeah.
And so, when you say these, well, okay, because these are kind of two things. So there's the book, there's the family. Which one do you prefer to talk about?
Since we're talking more professionally, I'll talk about. I'd rather talk about the book.
Mhm. That's
Family
fine.
might get a little too personal, right? So that's what I was like, yeah. I'm
It
very
it
proud
is
of it.
it is
So,
indeed it's your
yeah,
choice, but at the same time, I think it's also the default choice for many people.
yeah,
And that's, yeah. So let's talk about the work part, the book part.
yeah,
So
yeah.
say some more about that.
I've been thinking about writing a book for multiple years now, because we've been collecting all these experiences and working with so many people and making a difference in so many places. It just felt like this was something that I wanted to put out there. Um, and the whole idea with this was something we were talking about early on. How do we simplify things to help people in places where things have been made unnecessarily complex? How do we make things simpler where they've been made unnecessarily complex? And that was the entire idea behind the book. My hope is, and also was, that people read this book and they realize that they don't have to do a lot of complex things to solve hard problems. The initial attempt to solve the hard problem should be simple, and then you can add other complex things, but essentially simplifying the way we go about solving hard problems. So,
Hmm. That's yeah, that's how would I say it? That's a big challenge to write about that, I would say. Um, and so, because I think, well, this I try to add a lot of diversity in this list. Unfortunately, one of the places where I fail is that there are many people here who wrote a book, too many compared to other kind of people.
right, right.
um, but yeah, for a lot of people, publishing a book is one of their biggest achievement. Not always.
Mhm.
Well, there is a couple here who have written dozens of books. That's even another kind
Yeah.
of achievement. Um, but what is it? What helped you in doing that? Because there's also many people who have that dream, have that desire. What would be a tip that we would give to these?
The tip that I would give, at least in order to get started, is just start writing about whatever you're passionate about, and don't worry about how long the piece is. Just like think about writing just a blog post, even if it's just a blog post. Start there. Write 3 or 4 of them. It will get you into the flow of writing and finding your voice, finding that voice that people respond to. And that's the tip I would give. And once you've found that voice, once you've found the thing that you're passionate about, Well, at that point, it's one of those things. So just go, just start writing. And one of the things that helped me was I kept track of how many words I've written every day. I had a
Mhm.
counter. I have a whiteboard right here. I had a counter on it. In the morning,
A-
this was the count, and I would change that count the next day. Yeah.
And do you have did you have a goal for yourself in a way that you wanted to write X number of words every day? Or
I
how did that
it,
work for you?
kind of. I wanted to up that counter by 500 to 1,000 words every day. I was like I
Wow,
should be in that
that's a big
range.
number for
It,
everybody
it,
who's ever written. It's like, wow, that's a huge
it,
number.
it was, and the thing is, writing the words is not the part that's hard. It's editing and formatting and going back over and doing the multiple workthroughs. That's the hard part. Writing, in my opinion, for me, writing is easier because it just flows. It just comes through.
And do you do this at the same moment in a sense, or is that something you say, okay, now it's writing time, now it's editing time, or how does that work for you?
The way I did it was I did most of I did most of my writing first, got the MVP done, got the first bit of it done, and then kind of moved on to editing. I handed it to a few of my friends and was like, "Hey, help me out. Look through this. This is draft one. Tell me some things." And that, in fact, I did that even as I wrote each section. But it was that sequence of let me get the words out and then I'll go refine things.
It's I'm asking for basically that kind of answer because I think I've the most of the and I didn't talk to all the authors of course, but most of the authors I ask questions like this, they all say something similar. Like the
Mhm.
writing, first of all, the writing is the easy part, but many people don't even achieve that part. So it doesn't mean that it's easy, it's still hard. Um, but somehow, I don't know how it is for you, but somehow in school we are learned to basically write and edit at the same time, because when you write something in school and it's not good, also when we do write text or
Yeah.
we publish an email, whatever, it has to be perfect immediately. And yeah, for me that doesn't work, and for
Yeah.
many people like you also, I hear that it's like, let me first get my ideas out of my head, and then I can murder some of my babies in a way, or murder
Yeah,
some of my
yeah,
words and my chapters, which is also a hard part because yeah, now the book is too long, but this chapter is really good, but does it really belong there, or how could I make it? Yeah, that's kind of the thing.
yeah. it's
It's
it's it's the way I think about it is the way we coach people to build products. What is the MVP of my book? Let me write that first. Then I'll make this a little better. Then I'll make it a little better. Then I'll make it a little better. That's the way I think about it. And for me, that stream of consciousness writing of a chapter is the MVP, or a section is the MVP, and then we can come back and
and when you
iterate.
say you wrote it for friends, was it already available bigger than that? Is it, or is it
Uh, couple. So I initially, when I had the first section done, I sent it to a few people to be like, "Hey, give me some feedback on this." That was my MVP. The whole thing, I also published it on LeanPub, which where you can publish as you go. So
Yeah, I'm
I
a big
got
fan of
feedback.
Leanpub, and
Yeah,
that's a little bit why I was asking, because well, I was asking because I know Leanpub and I'm a big fan, but yeah, I didn't know if other people also had, if there were other systems just like that one. So that's a little
yeah.
bit how I was interested in.
Yeah, I use LeanPub, and even after I made it available generally, people gave me feedback, and I was able to incorporate it and update it. And that's the thing that I enjoy a lot, because just like we teach people, put things out there, get feedback, and update based on that feedback. We're able to do that even with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I really like that because indeed, for me, Leanpub changed the way you can write. It doesn't, well, I think it who was it? can't come up with the name right now, but there's a person a friend of mine, also an agile coach, who said, "Eve, that's really good for publishing, but for reading, it's horrible because you too much start changing." And so,
Yeah.
if it's for fiction, that probably wouldn't work. I also there is fiction published on Leanpub, but I'm not sure if it's always written in that specific way. But for these kind of books, and of course, you learn something, you can still update it. I do the same thing with my Leanpub books. Someone
Mhm.
tells me about a certain, there is, I don't know, it might be a spelling mistake or it might be
Yeah.
something completely different. I can just change it, update it, send it to all my readers, and hup, that's something you can't do in a physical book. That's just
Wh-
impossible.
Which is, I mean, then just along the same lines, Kindle Direct Publishing has done the same thing now, where they print your book on demand. So if you update a manuscript, the anything printed from a certain point forward will have those updates. So if you make those little fixes, even your printed books have quote
Oh
unquote
yeah,
versions, minor
yeah, that's
versions.
my daughter has a book that's written on or published on Leanpub, and she was actually interviewed in a podcast, and she talked about, and that person thought it was a physical book, and on the way home, I of course she was, what is it, 12 at the time. I drove her home, and on the way home, I we talked about it and said, actually, I think I can make that work. I can turn it
Mhm.
into an Amazon book that's actually a physical print on demand book,
Yeah.
and that was because of a misunderstanding. And like you say, every update you can just upload it. It takes a little bit
Yeah.
longer because Amazon has to do some checking or whatever,
Mhm.
but still it's an update. But yet the printed out versions, if I buy your book on Amazon, well, the physical one, I won't get an update if you change it. While if I buy it on Leanpub, I will have an update when you make an update. So that's, I
Yeah.
like, personally, I like that business model even more.
Yeah.
So that's a different kind of. But of course, people have to like to read read on the screen and
Honestly,
not just
yeah.
on paper. That's
Yep.
still a different. Okay, we've been talking already for a while. Let's move to that next question. And we're kind of, I asked already a little bit about tips. Do you have a personal agility tip to share?
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit already. Yeah, for me, it's remove anything that is not necessary. Like if we make everything better by removing things, not by adding things. You make progress by simplifying things, not by complicating things, and that applies to work, it applies to personal life, it applies to almost everything. The simpler you make things, the the easier it becomes to get through whatever you need to get through. So simplify, not simplify by removing, not make it more complicated by adding.
That's yeah, but that's I fully agree with that, and it's hard because
Hmm.
when you have to, yeah, how do you know when it gets better when something is removed? That is,
Yeah.
yeah, that it's hard to do because, yeah, that's. But I do fully agree with that. I once remember something I heard about Prince, that he was recording a certain song, and he totally didn't like it, and was like, something's wrong,
Mhm.
and then he threw away. I can't forget. I don't know anymore, but he took away one instrument, like it was the bass or the guitar or whatever. I don't remember what it was anymore. But just taking that instrument away made the song so much better, and it's one of his famous songs. I don't remember which one it is again, but that was like, yeah, just having the audacity as a musician to say, okay, it's already recorded, it's there, it's probably played by a fantastic musician, but it doesn't add anything to the song. Let's erase it. Or okay, in the case of a
Yeah.
recording, it's probably just taking away the slider to zero, and that's it. But still, it's released like that, and it's but it's a hard decision. How do you do that when we talk about products or when you talk about teams? How do you do this kind of stuff? Do you have
Yeah,
any tips?
it's interesting, right? Because our human nature is to, if when you're faced with a problem, to add something to solve that problem. When it comes to teams, I like to rely on things like cycle time, the simple metrics that say, hey, it takes us right now, it takes us 20 days to get things done. Well, what is it that we're doing extra that we can remove that'll make that shorter? That'll make what processes are getting in our way? We know we are capable of getting things done in 4 to 5 days, but it's taking 20 days. Something is getting in our way of getting this done. What is it that we get out of our way so that we can get this done as efficiently as possible? Uh, it's usually more about getting something out of the way of the team than introducing a new process into the team to make them go faster.
Yeah, it's yeah, but it's also about unlearning something. Yeah, if something you've learned,
Yes.
like I told about the traffic light, I need to
Yeah.
learn something new. And okay, that's and some of these things, it's what is it? And just considering the thing. And of course, in teamwork, it's not just one person you have to change in
Hmm.
it, something. It's multiple people, and we have to agree on which part to remove, and which yeah. So.
Yeah, and sometimes you remove something and it makes things worse. And if it does, well, as we said earlier, this is probabilistic. It might make things worse. It makes things worse. Okay, let's bring that thing back. Let's try removing something else. As long as we agree that all these things are experiments that we will observe and see results of, and act accordingly.
And I think it's when you state something without saying it, but I heard it in a way that when you do this, you what's the way? And I think GB Rainsberger said it like in a way that how can we make our changes? How can we make things that are revertible changes? So if we
Mhm.
take something away, can we put it back? If
Yeah,
the example with the thing I said about prints, okay, I just have to pull down the slider. I don't hear it. Oh, it sounds awful. I put it back, and
put it back. Yeah.
okay, no damage done. And I think in development we need to look at, okay, how could we, okay, if I
Mhm.
have a build server and I do a certain process and it takes, I don't know, it takes a gazillion time to run my tests, and that's why the release takes 3 weeks, because it's 1 million tests that are running, but they
Yep.
actually tell us something. I might turn it off, but probably that's not what I want to do, because
Right.
now I
Right.
will release software that is not tested.
Yeah.
But I can imagine that some people think like, okay, what do I need to do? Okay, I want faster feedback. Let's
Yep.
take what change these tests, and let's have the most important test in a quick running system that's giving me feedback immediately, and then have the rest running in the backend, and I still have feedback and a running thing that I can test on and work
Mhm.
like this.
Yeah.
So I really like that.
Or if I have a million tests and 990,000 of them have passed in every past instance, that test isn't telling me anything. Maybe those aren't as necessary as the ones that fail occasionally.
Mhm. Yeah, I've heard of friends, and that's already 4 or 5 years ago. That was actually they were working on some software that was actually, so the failed ones were almost automatically pulled into the batch, the first batch,
Hmm.
and everything else
Hmm.
was later on. And if indeed,
Yep.
if it's more than a year, every time passed, that's like, okay, we don't care that much. We might still occasionally run it for a large release, but
Right.
not on every build, or a lot later. Or if it's that many tests, maybe we need to run it on multiple tests at the same time, and find
Hmm.
different kind of ways. So in just a couple of minutes, we already found multiple ways on how to deal with that,
Yep.
from removing it completely to, okay, scaling it up, or to, okay, what tests bring me the most value, because that's a little bit what your example is, huh?
Yep.
um, that's yeah, that's really what yeah, what I like about that tip. uh it's an important one, and I think it's also one of the hardest, well, it's a hard one to implement.
Hmm.
Yeah, but that's also a little bit yeah, what what makes it valuable, I think. Let's
Yeah.
put it like that. Let's move to that next one. And we talked already a little bit about remote working earlier on. What have you learned about remote working? And maybe before we jump into that, you talked already about during COVID, we went on remote working. Did you do much remote working before that?
I did some remote working before that. There was I had at least one job where I was 50% remote. So I'd be in office one week, out of office the next week, and it worked really well. There were some things about it that were challenging back then. Back then with hybrid in that era, uh, because there were so many hallway conversations, in-person interactions that were happening even while I was remote, there was a lot I was missing out on. But now things are different. Now when you're working remote, because most people are working remote, most of those conversations you don't miss out on. You don't lose context that easily. Back then, working as one of the very few remote employees on a team, it was very easy to lose context on things.
That's indeed yeah. And how do you solve that?
One of my teams, we solved this for one of our teams. This was a long time ago. We had a live mic and a live speaker in the room at all times. We used to sit in a team room, and we had a pretty high quality mic that could pick up a lot of sounds, and the speaker in that room. And our two remote members were always logged into that link. So if there was a conversation, it was actually pretty cool, because there would be a conversation going on about what is this problem, how do we need to solve it, and all of a sudden you'll hear this team member's voice come out of the speaker, go, "Oh, I know about that one. This is the way I've done this before. This is how we should go about it." And it made them, because that conversation could have gone on forever, without that expertise being available, and made those people who were remote available to the team, and the team available to the people who were remote all the time.
It's yeah, I do. When I was talking about the first team I was working with in 2005, at that moment there was an option with Skype to have video, and there was no
Yep.
limit on the number of time. And we did experiment also with having a camera full time, so that at least you could. But I think we stopped it at some while, and I don't remember anymore where. But it gave us the feeling like we see the office from the other side, and we kind of
Mhm.
know, like, okay, people are there or they are not there, and that is important at
Yeah.
some level. Um, we didn't want, so we had some discussions about, do people feel spied or not, but because it's in an office where there is already a lot of other people there,
Right.
like, no,
Right.
we don't think that is an issue. It was not like we were focusing the camera on the screen. It was more like, okay, you could just see people at their desk, and especially at that moment, like I said earlier, the quality of the video was so bad that you were not able to see anything. But it was really like, okay, is Eve sitting at his desk or not? Basically, that
Mhm,
was it.
mhm.
And that brought so much. Okay, now I can contact him because he's there. Oh, he's not there, and because that's also sometimes you send a Slack message to a person, and you don't get any reply. Okay, it might look like I'm available because Slack is kind of good or to
Yeah.
tell. I still might be in a chat with a colleague who's in front of me,
Right.
or might be something else going on. So that kind of things. And I do think we don't have all the tools yet, but I do think that we're getting closer and closer to these kind of things that people feel like, okay, we have to
Yeah.
have better ways to indeed interact with each other, and find ways to
Yeah. I mean,
interact.
if you think about it, like this conversation, the one that we're having today, would never have happened if we hadn't started talking about remote work more and more, because we wouldn't have had the tools developed to a point that, this, as you showed right at the beginning of the episode, that someone sitting in Belgium and someone sitting near Miami, are connecting that easily. Even this wouldn't happen if remote work hadn't become a thing.
Right, right. That's definitely something. And I think, do you see differences in generations how we work with that kind of things? For
I,
example,
I don't
younger people, older people. I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, nothing that I have perceived. Nothing really. It seems like almost everyone's gotten used to it pretty well. So not, I have seen just in general in the workplace, people giving more importance to their own mental health. We did not used to do that as much, and hence putting time on their calendar to say I will not be online at this time because I need to take a break. But in general, it seems like that's pretty evenly split amongst different generations.
Okay. That's well, it's interesting to hear. I'm asking also because I see like my for example my the way my 16-year-old daughter
Hmm.
works with online. For her is like she's like basically in the morning sending video chats of like 5 to 10 seconds to friends and in Snapchat or something else. And for her is
Hmm.
like, yeah, that's it feels so much more logical than just calling someone, and especially not calling for a long time. They're constantly connected and completely not connected because they she might have four different conversations at the same time over video with
Yeah.
people, sending it to one or multiple people. And if I look back at like when I was that age, I was, yeah, I just told her today, like with my first girlfriend at the time, I was maybe
Mhm.
calling for an hour, and of course I had to how would I say it? I have to quarrel with my sister who also had a boyfriend and she also wanted to
Right.
call because basically we had one phone in the house and
Yeah.
now everybody has their own phone and everybody's sending. And but they rarely call people, but they have much more contact. That's the interesting
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
It's just a completely different way of connecting, I would say.
Yeah, I think the personal connection modes are very different. They definitely are. It's like I still haven't got the hang of texting. I still cannot do it properly. I can, but I don't. It's just I just prefer calling people and talking to people than texting. But that's just me. Yeah.
And so yeah, and exactly. And there's probably a generation that's between that is more like texting and calling, and like my daughter
Right.
is like video texting, or I don't know how to call it. Is sending video messages because
Yep.
texting takes too long, or writing whatever is like. Yeah, I'm bringing the example because just at dinner just before here, we talked about sending emails, and for them it's like, why would you ever send emails to a couple of people? Like, no, you
Yeah.
that's a whole different kind of thing. So, but we have to work across generations, and I think
Right.
that's the interesting part.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Let's move to that next question, which is about a book. What's a book that you yeah that you wanted to talk about? And I know that or I think there's a couple of ones that you wanted to share.
Yeah, there are two or three really, and I'll just go in the order in which I believe they were published. Yeah, I will. There is Dr. Sam Savage's Flaw of Averages. Uh, Flaw of Averages is the reason I like that book is because it changed my way of thinking about how we misuse math on a daily basis.
And let me
We
show. This is I think the book
Yes,
that you're talking
yes,
about. Huh?
that is Flaw of Averages. Yeah, and Dr. Sam Savage deconstructs these common mathematical hacks that we use, and shows their flaws. The tagline of the book is "Plans based on average fail on average." Yeah, essentially,
Wow.
your average has been wrong an average number of times in the past. It'll continue to be wrong an average number of times in the future. There are lots of things like that in that book that keep keep coming to you.
I,
Go, oh my god, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah, definitely. I when I prepared the picture, I didn't realize that the word average was in there, although I typed it to find it. But I have the same. I would say I have some kind of allergic to averages. They help
Hmm.
out because, like with velocity and other things, it's like okay, I don't want to predict the exact thing, but if I look back at 10 sprints or 10 whatever, I know that it will average out. But at the same time, sometimes people go so much like I think the number in Belgium is like I think women have 1.45 on average. The Belgian woman has 1.45 children. Now there is no woman who has a woman who
What
has
point? Yeah,
1.45
yeah,
children. That just doesn't exist. But
yeah,
still, we think about averages, and for me, that's one of these nice examples that yeah, it's different kind of thing. It helps for if you look at the larger scale, but if you want to predict how many uh,
yeah,
children a woman has, that doesn't help because yeah, no, it's
yeah.
always either one or two or more or less. So yeah, it's, so it's
Yeah, and as that's why I love that book, because as you read more and more about it, because the funny thing is, he sets it up for you. First, he tells you averages are bad, and then you're like, okay, well then I can do average plus minus standard deviation and all that stuff, and then he shows you why that is bad. So it's a very interesting way of saying the same things we were talking about earlier. All these patterns that we have learned over time, use this in this way, use that in that way, it starts shifting your things, shifting your thought process towards let's think critically about these things instead of just accepting them.
and
So
yeah, and that's it's about when what I'm hearing is like because a lot of people when they work with averages, they want to have they look for it for um, how is it called for certainty. Let's give me certainty,
yeah,
and in a way that doesn't help, and that might actually tie back, I think, to some of the other books that you
yeah,
wanted to talk about.
exactly. Yeah, this is where the next one I believe in publishing order is actionable agile metrics for predictability, from Dan Vacanti. Dan's a good friend of mine, and a lot of my work is inspired from his work, or even borrowed from his work. And
Um, let
once
me
you
show
start,
his book
yep,
on.
yep,
This is
right
the
there.
book. And this
If
is, I think, the second or the third time that people bring up the book. So it's
Yeah,
and I've recently discovered, I think last week or a couple of weeks ago, I discovered that actually he had already published. There's a second version of that book, or second?
yeah,
No, not a.
volume
It's
two.
a volume
Yeah,
two. That's the word I was looking for. So it's not the second
yeah.
edition, but it's
It's not a second edition. It's a continuation. Volume two came out late last year, around the same time as my book came out too. And Dan
oh,
Dan
it's a competition.
it's a competition. Yeah, buy mine, not his. Now, please buy Dan's book. He's done a
But
good job.
that's why you're talking about his first book and not his second. Now I understand.
Yeah, it's
Sorry,
actually
Dan.
the thing is, Dan needs to. If you have to you have to understand the things in the first book before you get to the second one. So,
Yeah, exactly.
and just like Dr. Sam Savage's book starts reshaping your thoughts about math, Dan's book starts reshaping your thoughts about metrics as being used in Agile. It starts reshaping this idea of there are a bunch of metrics being used in Agile, but there are some of these metrics that were being discussed almost a century ago that make even more sense than the metrics that are currently being used. And
Mm.
actionable agile metric for predictability introduces you to those metrics, introduces also due to those ideas. and
Yeah,
and
it's
obviously volume 2 expands on
and
it.
well, and just to say that this book is like almost 10 years old. This
Yeah,
the first edition. So in that sense, it's incredible that not many people heard about, or well, I don't know, not many people, but well, I think our agile community has grown a lot in the last 10 years. So there might actually be a lot of people who have not heard about that book. I don't think I read it in 2015, but yeah, it's definitely already a while ago since I read it. So
yeah.
it's it's
and
so
and if you have and if you have read it, the volume 2 is, I told Dan that I think volume that is his best work yet. The actionable agile metrics for predictability volume 2. He goes much deeper into it.
well, I was when I heard about the volume two, and especially because it builds on the first one, I was like, well, I'll probably have to reread the first one because it's like, yeah, like
Yeah,
many things we've learned,
yeah.
and it's really good, yeah, to have that, to have these two together. And I know you have a third book, so let's think
Yeah,
about
and the last one in that order, in the publishing order, is Thinking in Bets.
it. And
This
that's this
is,
one.
yep, this is Annie Duke. I'm sure I have a copy here of it somewhere. Copies of all these books behind me. But Annie Duke is a World Series of Poker player. She is a World Series of Poker champion, and she talks about everything that we were talking about right at the beginning of how this world is probabilistic, and how do you make the right decisions when you're given choices of which decision to make. How do you think in making small bets so that you can continue to be in the game for a long term, and adjust your decisions based on what we learn. Remember, Eve, you said earlier, I've played thousands of cricket games, so that has helped me make better decisions. Each of the fact that I've played for so long helps me that, and same thing is true for work, for companies, for poker players. The longer you stay in the game, the better you can play the game. So how do you think in small bets so that you can learn and make better decisions?
Yeah, definitely. And I think she recently, well, recently, a couple of years ago, she also published. I don't know if it's much related because I haven't read Thinking in Bed, but she also wrote a book about quitting, about knowing when to walk away, when to
I,
quit. I can
I
think it's
see it.
related to.
I see it right here.
Yeah, and I think it's for me it's when I hear
Yeah.
you talk about bets, it's also
Hmm.
when I think I can backroads recently some things about playing poker and
Hmm.
okay, when not to keep pushing it. Okay, I've lost already some money. I think I can win it back and all these kind of things. And that's it made me think also about this book because indeed it's about okay knowing when again when you bet on something, well, is it worth to go deeper or do you yeah is it already a sunken cost and should you walk away from something,
Yeah.
and that's the book where I got to know her from. um
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like all three of these books, frankly, they all go towards breaking your existing mold of how you understand reality
mm,
so that you can understand reality better. And that is what I like about all three of these books. They give you a new way to think about what's in front of you, and help you understand what's happening in front of you a lot better.
so then we definitely see that we're in the matrix and it's all a game, and that's a whole different
Yeah,
kind of a
exactly.
story.
Keep going down that track. Yes.
But it's yeah it's I think this is what's interesting about books like this, and because indeed you learn something and then you realize okay what I thought the world was is like actually, especially how the our mind is playing tricks with us with
Hmm.
metrics. And I do think many, well, I think every agile coach has already had the thing where management is asking for some yeah some kind of metrics. And I've moved recently to engineering manager role, and there I see the same thing. It's tempting to go in that road. At some point we need some kind of ways, but okay, what kind of metrics are actually helping us and what not? And that's these are
Hmm.
interesting discussions because most of it is like for me like what is helping a team to make decisions, not so much for me, but okay, what are kind of metrics that helping them to understand where they are and where they can move, and
Yeah.
not use it as some kind of I don't know trick to play with that.
Yeah. The whole point of a measurement of a metric is to make some decision. And if your metric is not helping you make a decision, it's probably just a vanity metric that you're throwing out there.
Oh yeah, that's the other part. Yeah, yeah. But on the same thing, yeah, depends a little bit on what we think is helpful, because sometimes we use metrics also as a way to, we think it justifies our decision, but actually in our mind that decision has already long been taken,
Mhm.
and we just need some, I don't know, validation or some way that we say, oh, this is actually a real decision. Yeah, it's a different kind of thing. Okay, let's move to, for me, one of the most interesting questions, especially after a conversation we had like this, is that what kind of question do you think I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
Huh. I, I don't know. I think we've covered such a wide variety of topics. Uh, I I I think we've kind of covered most of this stuff, but the question that always comes to me is, well, we have all these metrics. How do we make a decision based on them? How do we actually decide? And I think that is where we go to the next level of, now that we have an understanding of how our system works, can we project this out? Can we run a bunch of simulations of how our system will behave and use that to make some decisions? To me, I think every decision that someone makes, they are running a bunch of simulations in their head already. They're already saying, if I do this, that will happen, and then that will happen, and then that will happen. Why not automate it? Why not kind of figure out, okay, let's help, we have all this computing power, can we use that to run this and understand what are the risks associated with different decisions? I think decision making needs to become more of a science rather than just a gut feel thing, where we rely on data, where we rely on simulation, and no decision is ever final, because we rely on the experiment results in order to say, okay, are we sticking with this decision or not?
Yeah, I really like that. It's but like you say, we have to work in a way to make it changeable, because yeah, when you make decisions in software that are, yeah, whatever. I think with GB, and I think I'm trying to come up with who else it was, but I don't remember anymore. But the fact that we have a source control system that made, basically I can make a change to the code base and I can revert it. I
Mhm.
know what the change is. Um, it's a lot easier. Google Documents does the same thing. I add it and
Yep.
automatically it has multiple versions. I can go back. I can share my documents. I have documents that I've shared with a couple of hundred people, and I just get an email when something is changed, and I'm like, okay, this is a hacker. I can just release, revert that, or this is a friend that actually changed the spelling mistake and made it better. Okay, thanks, great. Um, Without these kind of version control systems and helping out, I would never dare to share these kind of documents with tons of people. And I think that is, for me, for me, one of the challenges in the world. How can we make, well, maybe not everything, but a lot more of the tools that we're using, having some kind of version control, some kind of history that
Yeah.
allows us to roll back some things. Do you have
Yeah.
any experience with this kind of things?
I do. I've done this a few times, like especially with the with continuous deployment kind of systems, especially with things like Google Firebase. When I deploy a website and I go, oh, I messed up, let me revert back, or let me go to the version that was revisions back. We have all these things available, as you're saying, to easily revert back to easily roll back, or to roll back even for previous versions, not just the last one, and then roll forward when we have the right thing available. We have all of these for me, and this is the fourth book now, I guess. All of these are examples of what Nicholas Taleb calls anti-fragile. This is
Mm,
anti-fragility. It's we make
right.
mistakes and become better because of it, not become worse because of it, but something breaks and it makes us better instead of making us worse.
I really like that. That indeed, that's yeah, and the anti-fragile. I will definitely add that book to the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, what yeah, what he wrote that in. yeah, what was the subtitle again? What we've learned from disorder and everything that's around that.
Yeah.
And I
Hmm.
think a lot of the, well, let's say project methodologies that we had before agile were about, okay, let's stabilize that nothing is changing in the world. And what you're saying is actually we try to do the opposite. It's like, okay, what the therapist is saying is like, how can we make us survive it, and how can we make it that we're not, I would call,
Yeah.
bitten by the problem in a way, and how could we make these kind of things
Yeah.
and I think for me it feels like software is ahead of a lot of other things. I don't know if you agree with that.
In some respects, yes. In other respects, no. What I like about Taleb's thing is change is a good thing, and you can take
Mm.
advantage of change by modeling it into your systems and taking the right decisions. I think a lot of software development right now relies on planning and estimating and figuring things out so that we can lock stuff in. It's not supposed to do that, but we do this locking stuff in, and then we're surprised when change happens. Well,
Mm.
we should design our systems in a way that take advantage of the fact that change happens, not be broken when change happens. And that's I think that's where some places in software have gotten ahead of it. Other places are still catching up.
Oh, okay. That I recognize fully, but I was like, I was more asking for, yeah, and of course, like with every system, not everybody understands it and
Right.
use it. But I was wondering if you see other places in the world that without that, so not the software world, that has
Hmm.
also
Hmm.
similar kind of advantages. Uh, to how could we make our world to take advantage of that, and I had the feeling that, again, when people want that and when we create the environment for it, that software allows us to do that on a much larger scale than other kind of
Yeah.
examples.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you know, if you go to when you go to the grocery store, or when you go to the airport, the number of lines you see, when they really get bad, well, they open up a new counter, or eventually they go, okay, you know what, this lines are getting really long, this is a bad thing, but something good can come out of this. We can create self checkout lanes. So this way, let's introduce some technology where people can do it themselves. That is a good thing that comes out of a bad situation. You see this happening everywhere,
Yeah,
where we
I
take something.
recognize that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, something some a system goes into disorder, and we use that to make things better, and software's gotten pretty good at it. All the chaos monkey stuff that Netflix did a while ago, software's
Yeah.
definitely gotten
Yeah,
pretty good at it. Yeah.
nice example indeed. It's like,
Mhm.
let's not make sure that nothing breaks down. No, let's at randomly break down shit, and let's make sure our software survives it. That whole chaos engineering is
Exactly.
wonderful. It's the complete opposite. I do remember, like, this is actually right now. It was about 10 years ago
Oh yeah,
that I was
something like
working
that.
with a large bank, and I know I discussed it with one of the other coaches. Like, you know what? It would be awesome if they would dare to do that. But that was a bank. Like, there's no way they're ever going to go with that. And just after I left, I heard that there was actually a team that was playing around with chaos engineering, still
Mm.
in staging, not in production, because of course it's a bank and we don't
Mhm,
want to
mhm,
do that.
mhm.
But the fact that they would even dare to do that in staging was something I hadn't seen coming. And I have to say, there I was locked in myself. And I do think that it's, yeah, and you see the advantages so much on stability
Yeah,
if you can have these kind of things.
absolutely. It's
It's
like if you have a team that has someone who has one person who holds a lot of knowledge, one of the best things you can do for that team is to
just remove
send that
them.
person on vacation. Yeah, you have a month of vacation, go. And then the team needs to figure out how they can get things going, and they will pick up the knowledge. Yeah.
It's a little bit, yeah. Chris Matz has wrote something about that in the book Commitment, or well, that he
Mhm.
wrote,
Mhm.
that he co-wrote. And there is a part, and I'm trying to come up with the exact name, but it's literally about that. That when people have, so what he says is that the people who have most knowledge, he wants them to work least on the biggest thing that they know knowledge about. They
Yeah.
want them to help out, but you want new people to work on that problem. And the nice thing is that, especially the boring stuff, let's face it, the smartest people, they don't like to work on some of these
Yeah.
boring stuff. But if it's the hardest thing, even the boring part of the hardest thing, they will put them on where actually a lot of other people can do that. And for these other people, they're learning. The smartest person, or the, well, maybe not the smartest, but the person with the most knowledge doesn't have to work on the boring part, so he or she likes it as well. More knowledge gets spread, and that person that has most of this knowledge is called in when there's a really tough problem, which is when you need this person the most, and that knowledge is shared, and everybody is keep growing and stuff. And the same person can work on an environment where he knows less about, because there he's a novice again, and he keeps learning at another level.
Yeah.
That's one of the techniques I've learned along the ways. It's very hard to convince people, both managers but people themselves. It's like, yeah, but I'm the genius for this part, and I know everything. The world will fall apart if I don't do it. Yeah, maybe, but if we can make it, try to do it in a safe way and find ways
Yeah.
on how to learn it. Actually, we won't depend as much on you, and actually, we're in a safer place.
Hmm. Absolutely.
That's really good, yeah, good story and good things there.
Hmm.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay, I want to move to that next question, and for me, well, the last question, and also one that I'm really looking forward. Who do you think I should ask next? And just like with the books, I think you have a couple of people in mind that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had sent you an email with this, and I really don't remember who had said. So I'm going to tell you the people who are on top of my mind right now.
Mhm.
A couple of people come to my mind. Colleen Johnson is one of them, for
And
sure.
that's the first one that was indeed
Oh,
on your list.
there you go.
And by coincidence, because sometimes, and actually, I think you were the person who invited her, but I did send some emails up front, and
Mhm.
by coincidence, her interview was already recorded. So this is a little bit
There you
strange,
go.
because I
It
already
works.
talked with her, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it was indeed, I think, thanks to you. So why should I talk to her? Well, I know I already talked with her, but could you say some more? Why do you think it's interesting to
Uh,
talk to her?
I mean, Colleen's been a leader in the space for a while and is someone that not enough people know about. A lot of people know Colleen, but I don't believe enough people know about her. And she's been doing some great work at the enterprise level. She's been doing a great work leading the pro Kanban community, and fostering an environment where people feel comfortable to come in and voice their opinions and have open discussions. Um, a lot of people talk about, a lot of people know people who are currently doing the things that we all talk about, but Colleen's creating a community that's creating the next things that we will talk about. So
Wow.
and when we talk about, when you ask the question who is agile, it's the people who are at the forefront of this, the people who are going
Mm.
to be, who are fostering the environments where the next things we'll be talking about in 5 years exist. So Colleen's that person for me.
I really like how you state that, because for me, well, who's agile is, it's multiple things, and sometimes people only think about the people who created the manifesto, for example, these
Mhm.
17 people, and a few others that were big names today. But for me, it's also a lot about the future, and also about people that are just working on their small little corner in a team where nobody knows them, because they might have good ideas, but indeed it's very interesting, and I think the conversation I had with her is indeed along that lines, about, okay, what is the next thing, and how do people think, and these kind of things. So that's indeed for me, one of the reasons to talk with people. So thanks for inviting her. Okay, who else do you have in mind?
The other person that comes to my mind is Nagesh Sharma. He's a leader in this space in India, where obviously the market is huge. India is a huge market, and Nagesh has been bringing in ideas to that
And I
market.
think
And
that's him, right?
yes, that's Nagesh. Absolutely, yeah. Nagesh has been bringing these forward-thinking ideas into this market for multiple years. To me, amongst the very few people in India who actively look for new ideas outside of what people already know and bring it to the subcontinent and help people around him absorb these ideas and spread them there. In terms of impact, if you think about it, it's the most populated country in the world, and Nagesh is poised to have one of the biggest impacts in that region.
And I think for me, one of the reasons also to invite people from not just what I would say Western countries like Europe or
Mhm.
America, is that yeah, there are, like you say, this is a big number of people, but also with a lot of diversity, a lot of other ways of thinking, and there is
Yeah.
definitely a lot that we can learn from them. It's not because the Agile Manifesto was written by, let's say, mostly Western people or fully
Mhm.
Western people, that's where only the ideas of good Agile ideas can come from.
Yeah.
And I think in that sense, we kind of ignored, or well, for well, most of the people came from the Western world in the beginning. Not all of them, I would still add, because I can yeah I can think about a few books that are read that were not coming from Western people, but still it's important to give much more attention to people like that. So thanks for bringing that.
Yeah. And I did quickly look up who was my third person there, because I didn't want to forget that my third person there was Troy Lightfoot. um Troy has been uh, Troy has been doing the thing that we were doing earlier of finding new ways to communicate these ideas. Every time I talk to Troy, he
And
comes up.
I think this is Troy, right? Is this correct?
You know what, this might, I mean, he's so covered up, I am not really sure.
That
But
that that, that's a
yeah,
risk I have with
yeah,
for we did have a pre-talk, but I didn't show any of the pictures, none of the
yeah,
books, neither the persons.
yeah,
But it's indeed it's a very difficult picture that I think I stole from
absolutely.
LinkedIn, but that doesn't mean it's
Yeah,
the
Troy,
right one.
Troy you'll see Troy has been talking a lot about these probabilistic thinking ideas, probabilistic forecasting, and all that fun stuff. And he puts it, the same things that we were trying to do, of putting it in words that are easily absorbable by people. Uh, Almost every time I talk to Troy, he's talking about this in a slightly different way to see if it works. And he's talking about it in a slightly different way to see if it works. I know Troy's not really that active on social media, so you might not be able to find a picture of him very quickly. But
That's
Troy
probably
Lightfoot, yeah, yeah. Uh,
But
Troy,
okay, but that
Troy,
still is an important person to talk to.
yeah,
And just to make sure, well, afterwards we'll talk, and I will
mhm,
ask you to send me some contact details, because I want to be sure that I invite the right Troy, because
yeah,
you never know if there's multiple people there. That would be kind of strange. But yeah, thanks for bringing again a diverse number of people here
yeah.
with different kind of things. So that's definitely something also important and close to me that I care about. Now we've been talking for almost 2 years. That almost
Wow.
2 hours, 2 years. Okay, that
If
would
that
be
feels,
yeah. But now I start to feel tired. That's it.
yeah.
I really want to thank you for your time. What would be a good way for people to contact you if they want to get in touch with you?
The place where I am the most active these days is LinkedIn. So
And I
if
think
yeah,
that's your account, if
that's
that's
me.
the
Yep,
correct one.
that is me. Yep. So that is
Okay.
the place I'm the most active. I have kind of stopped doing other social media, just in that one place at this point. Um, Even that almost feels like I should probably give up on it, but for professional reasons, I need to be there. But yeah, that's the easiest place to find me. Um, and yeah, I most of the time I respond to most messages or anything that come my way there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for your time. It's been a wonderful evening, I would say. It's really interesting conversations. Really, we it feels like a lot of things that we have in common or ways to think. Sometimes, well, especially with the three books, it's these were books that for me I have heard, but like the one from Annie, I didn't read. It was a good reminder about Dan's book. So that's like I said earlier. I think this week, I don't know, somewhere the last month, I heard about that second version, or that what did you say before, the
Oh, the volume two. Yeah.
volume 2. So that's something I've learned and reminds me about that. But not just the books. I think the whole conversation was really a wonderful time. So thank you
Yeah.
for spending 2 hours with me, and I hope that
No, thank.
here will enjoy this as much as I did.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I did forget to mention. I should say it. Dan Vacanti and I do have a podcast of our own called Drunk Agile. So if any of you are interested in finding us there, you can find us on Drunk Agile on YouTube. And it was
I was
definitely
planning indeed to add the link there, and
oh lovely. Yeah,
it's worked indeed to yeah, to listen to as well. So
yeah,
that's that.
and finally, Eve, thank you so much for having me. I I hope people enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, and I'm sure as much as you did. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Take
for
care.
watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.